Well, welcome to this session of DynamicsCon, and this is a GP topic today. The topic is You Own It, So Use It, 10 Hidden Gems in GP. My name is Carol Livingston, and I would like to thank DynamicsCon for hosting this session. It's a great opportunity for the community to share and learn, and by the way, it doesn't cost anything for you because we have those lovely sponsors. So thank you for joining today. So we'll just get started. I'm Carol Livingston. I'm the owner of Dynamics Connections. I've been in the finance and corporate finance area for about 25 years. And about 16 years ago, I switched into doing technology consulting and started as a GP consultant. And I've a certified Microsoft professional. I've worked at partners small and large. And my current role is providing ISV education for Microsoft partners. So where do you start? So optimizing GP, it definitely is going to be here. It's not going away. Microsoft announced last year that they've extended the roadmap to 2028. And you can ask an expert, get with your Microsoft partner. They know your system. They know best practices. That can be of assistance. And also you can ask a colleague, or post a question on the Dynamics user group discussion forum. That's a great way to ask other people, what do they see or what works for them? Maybe post a question. And anything that you're doing outside of GP, whether it's on Excel or manual processes, that's a potential to find some items that could be automated and then learn about it. Get the user guide, do some testing, watch videos. There's a lot of great videos out there by MVPs, by partners. On Dynamics User Community, they have a channel, or Dynamics User Group. They have a recordings of the past DynamicsCon. Those are great sessions to go and look at and test. Don't just automatically buy a fancy third party. Go ahead and test some of the out-of-box functionality first in GP. And I'm hoping that you're inspired and empowered to find really what you own and use it. So how do you know what you own? So look at the GP license renewal that you pay, or ask your Dynamics partner. There's really 3 packs or licensing groups. These are bundles of capabilities. So you might own the starter pack, which everybody should have. You might also have bought the extender pack or extended HR and payroll. Then take an inventory of your GP capabilities. So search for this Microsoft document called GP Capabilities Guide. The last one they issued was 2018. But that can be a great checklist. And you can see, again, if you have a starter pack, everything in orange, you already own that. Maybe it's not installed. Maybe you don't have security to it, but you own it. And then how do you know what's installed? So that's tough, right? Because maybe it's installed and or not installed, because some products have to be installed separately. So you need to find what's called dynamics.set file. It has a list of products, ISVs, and customizations that are installed. And this is known as the launch file. There's the location that it typically is at. And I will tell you, start with the server, your main server for Dynamics. But also it could be on an individual user's desktop. They might have a different launch file. Sometimes that happens. People will have differences from their workstation to the SQL server. And what do you have access to? So security is a big issue too, right? So maybe now you figured out it's installed, but now you don't have access. So, get with the security administrator of your system or your partner and ask them to help you run some reports. So there's some great user reports out of the box that will, basically give you a list of all of the activities or tasks that they can do in the system. Keeping in mind segregation of duties, I do want to mention that from an internal control perspective. And then third-party tools can also assist, like GP Power Tools is a great security report as well. And how can I learn more about these features? Well, review that capabilities guide that I told you about. Just search on that in your browser. It has a great overview, descriptions. Read the Microsoft Online documents for each module. So there's that link. When you go to docs.microsoft.com, you have to do a little bit of digging. So you might want to write that down, because if you have the link, it's a little easier, and you can see what you should see when you get to that link there in that picture. And you can watch a video. Like I said, past DynamicsCon sessions have great information about some of these modules. Let's get started. So 10 hidden gems in GP. So first one up is EFT for payables and receivables. Some people might be aware of EFT for payables, but you might also not be aware there's also EFT for receivables, which is a great solution for, basically receiving payments from customers and even refunding customers definitely take a look and see if you own that and if you are using it. But it can output a file to a bank. You can print a payment register. You can even email a remittance to a vendor. You can do testing and send pre-notes to a bank. You can do US ACH or international transactions. And you probably want to check with the bank and get that file specifications for ACH and do some testing coordination with them. And I've put the user guide references there at the bottom of the window. So if you want to go to the Microsoft documentation, this is where you're going to find that. And sometimes it's a little elusive because you might be thinking, well, I want EFT for receivables. I'll look in the receivables management guide. No, it's actually in the payables guide. So make note here as we go. Safe Pay, that's the module for positive pay. You might be more familiar with that name. You can confirm with the bank, basically the authenticity of a payables check before it gets paid. So that authorizes the bank to release that check. And each bank has their own specifications, so request that from your bank. Coordinate testing with your bank because you might have to test a couple of times. And you can generate that file to upload after each check run. And then bank systems often have their own portal. So someone might have to go in and approve that. So again, internal controls, it might be dual control, so someone else that'll approve that. Electronic bank reconciliation. So are you waiting till the end of the month to do your bank rec? Maybe you could do this a little more frequently than at the end of the month, but you can import that bank statement and it automatically reconciles transactions. And match transactions are posted to a cash account or to a hold account, and it integrates even with analytical accounting. And I do think that it's something you can look at maybe to shorten your month-end close by doing it more frequently. Scheduled payments, that's for customers or vendors. So think of it this way, a loan payment or maybe a payment arrangement that you've made with a customer. They can't pay a bill or an invoice, so maybe create a payment schedule and schedule that out. You can even add interest. It really is like an amortization schedule for a loan, and it creates scheduled payments based on an original document. So if you have an invoice that you sent to a customer, that becomes the basis of scheduling that. And you can include interest, payment frequency. You can post those scheduled payments so you know what's coming up that's due, or that you need to make payments. Maybe you have a large invoice that you got from a vendor. You want to spread out over time. And even customers can pay additional amounts and it can re-amortize. Fixed asset management. Okay, so those things that you're doing in Excel, please tell me you're not doing fixed assets in Excel. But if you are, there is a fixed asset module. I've worked with clients when I was a consultant and say, oh, well, there's no fixed asset module. I want to get a third party. I'm maintaining this in Excel. Well, that's really difficult to manage. So putting it in Dynamics GP, you can maintain the asset records. You can track other things like property, tax location, leased equipment for capital improvements. You can do additions, transfers, retirements, intercompany transfers, and it integrates with other modules, so you can post through to fixed assets like from payables or purchase order management. And it maintains the different books, so up to 32 different books. So if you've got not only your internal or GAAP for your fiscal year, but maybe you've got federal, state, AMT, you can talk to your tax professional about which tax schedules that you need to maintain. And it has multiple calendars for fiscal year, calendar year, etc. And different depreciation methods, lots of different options there. And you can post to different ledgers. There's the new reporting ledger, so that's helpful if you need to post it to maybe a local ledger or IFRS. And there's 15 defined user codes. I think these are really powerful because you can track different things, like maybe by project or some other method. And you can do projections for budgeting as well. And that post the depreciation in the GL. Now you can post in summary, that's just one lump sum, or in detail. And again, there's a whole fixed asset manual about this. So stop doing fixed assets in Excel and use fixed assets in GP. Next up is you own payroll in HR. So that just comes with your Dynamics GP. Maybe you don't have it installed or have security to it. So integrated US and Canadian payroll, and this allows you to do in-house payroll. So you don't have to outsource it. You can run payroll checks and direct deposit earnings. You can automate the tax updates because Microsoft maintains federal and state tables. And it gives you annual and hot fixes, like when there's a tax form change or maybe a new tax rule or structure that needs to be changed. And for Canadian, they also have year-end updates as well. You can use Payroll has a solution to import ADP. So if you insist on using ADP, you can integrate those payroll transactions, and you can print W-2s and upload year-end files to like the Social Security Administration, and you can print tax forms. There's also a huge HR module. Has lots of employee data management, things like applicant tracking, benefits, ACA reporting, attendance, performance review. There's a lot in there. So I would take a look at it, because if you're looking for a really simple HRIS solution, this might help your HR team. Again, a lot of this I hear people tracking in Excel, and it is available. And then effective March 22nd, there was some modules that were listed in the extended HR and payroll modules that will no longer be offered by Microsoft. It actually will roll back to Integrity Data, who was the original equipment or developer of that solution. So you can still get support, you can still get those modules or extended features. And again, there's a whole payroll and human resource user guide on this. And GP approval workflows. So if you're doing a lot of things manually, or maybe you have a remote workforce now because work from home, people aren't going into the office. So this workflow, you can set up all of the out-of-the-box ones. There's 16 of them here. Some of them are transaction related. Some of them are, master records. But you can definitely use these out-of-the-box ones or create your own workflow. And it supports, it makes a consistent process, which can really eliminate paper, errors, tracking down that lost invoice. And it has automatic notifications and emails. And you can access this through Outlook. So you don't have to be necessarily a user that logs in to approve transactions. There's reports to monitor the progress, and approvers can delegate and assign tasks to other approvers, like if they're on vacation. It will send reminders if the approvals are past due, so you can kind of set a time limit on there. And even an escalation, like if they need to assign it to another approver. You do need IT assistance because there are a few things on the server that you need, like some ports opened up on the server, web services installed. And approvers, really find this fascinating because they could also even look at attached documents to transactions, so they can drill in and see those even from the email notification. And where you're going to find this is in the installation and administration and system setup manual. So you're going to have to dig a little bit into that administrator manual. Revenue and expense. So this makes automatic entries into future periods. So another great thing, I've seen people doing this using like their prepaids. They have a whole Excel sheet that tells them what to book every month to expense a portion of that expense on a prepaid basis. Or revenue deferrals. So maybe they have revenue recognition. They need to spread out an invoice over a period of time that it's earned. So a great way to do that is that you can set up your deferral profiles in this module, and it will create entries from the GL, receivables, payables, sales order processing, purchase order processing, and invoicing. So basically all your transaction modules. Again, you're going to find this in the General Ledger User Guide under Chapter 11. Professional Tools Library. So I threw this one in. It's not really kind of typically a module. Microsoft used to charge for this in March of 2012. They actually gave it to everyone at no additional charge, but you may not have it installed. So there's some useful tools in here. One of them, I will say, is a very useful tool, Doc Date Verify. So GP will warn when the doc date is closed. So Doc Date Verify will basically warn the user that that doc date is closed. So if they fat finger something instead of entering 2022 as the year, they type 2200. That can happen, right? And you don't even know it. It doesn't warn the user. They fat fingered it. It's in the database, and basically it's not due until about 100 years from now. And there's other ones in here too, like GL master triggers. So you can basically, anytime you set up a master record, have it replicate into another company. There's company copy, there's certified payroll report. One useful one here is receivable transactions. So it can move maybe applied document that's in history back to an open status. And Select Checks Combiner. That's another good one. The reason I think Microsoft gave this away starting in March of 2012 is that they added a lot of those utilities you see there to their GP utilities. So they're now part of your Dynamics windows. So like something like Customer Combiner and Modifier, Vendor Combiner and Modifier. Those are now actually in just GP utilities. Huge warning here, though. This is a tool that can update your records permanently. So you don't want to just willy-nilly use this. So, you want to use it off peak hours. You probably want to be the only user in the system. I would do a lot of testing, especially if you have a lot of third parties. Make a backup before you run any of these utilities. And you possibly have to run some other utilities afterwards. So see the documentation. And this should only be limited to a system administrator. You don't want power users or anyone else doing these as well. That is in, again, the Installation Administration Guide, Professional Tools Library. So what are your next steps? So 1, take an inventory, look at the capabilities guide, get your list of what is installed, what do you have access to, and educate yourself. I mean, it's great. Your Dynamics partner can assist you. You can go to some training like, Amber Bell, who's doing some of these sessions. She can train you, or you can go out to some of the Dynamics user group videos from past DynamicsCons. Ask an expert, talk to your partner. I always like to let my partner know or be involved, because sometimes they're going to have to support you and they're like, wait a minute, you have what installed? So make sure you ask for help and guidance. Don't just try to do something on your own without getting their input first. And then test. I can't emphasize that enough. So make a backup, test, create a test company with a copy of your data and test it. Maybe make yourself a power user in that system and that test company. And then you have free access to everything that's installed. And then be a superhero on Optimize GP. So thank you again for joining. Hopefully you can be a superhero too and use what you own. So thank you. And don't forget that we have a live Q&A after this session. So stay put for the Q&A. Thank you. I have Amber Bell here, who's joining me to help me with the questions and the Q&A. So thanks, Amber. You're my superhero today as well.
Well, I got a shout out. I have to join. I thought I would go through some of the questions that people had, and then we'll go through some other things. Did you have anything you wanted to add before we do the questions?
No, I think let's see what questions we've got so far. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the questions somebody had was, let me see where it is. Okay. They had asked about for fixed assets. They wanted to know how to run the fixed assets subledger. Do you know what they were talking about or what they need to do?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what they mean by run. So there is a whole module, once you, have access to it. I think it has a separate install. So it has to be installed. You have to have security. And then, once you've configured it, set up your books, set up your calendar, import it or input your fixed assets, then you can basically run depreciation. You can run kind of a preliminary depreciation, which is very helpful to look at before you post through the GL. That's always good. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. Is it Teresa? I forget. It
was a person named Jennifer Connor. So hi, Jennifer.
Jennifer. Okay, perfect.
One thing I was going to add is that sometimes you might not see these things like Carol mentioned. You might have to have them installed. It's not additional purchase because it's included with GP, but your partner might have to install, or in the registration, they might have to just check a box to show them. You answered a question over here, but I thought it was a good thing to talk about. Teresa asked, where's the best place to find the most up-to-date GP manuals?
Yeah, so I put the link in the chat, but it is like you just you have to dig a bit. So I got that link. I thought I better share that with the group here. you want to go to docs.microsoft.com, and there is a section for Dynamics GP.
Yeah.
So it's a little buried, but once you have that link, then there's different categories. There's like a financial one. It's kind of by the series, right? So you open up each one and you'll see the topics, and sometimes the topics are in a spot that you're not quite familiar with. Like I put in which chapter, under each of my slides where to find the manual, because sometimes it's in another spot you wouldn't expect, maybe EFT for receivables is really in the payables manual. So good question, Teresa.
Yeah. I put a link into the chat that is Belinda Allen has on her blog. She has all the old What's New books, which is helpful if you're jumping a couple versions. It's good to have access to those. The other thing, I have books and things that I've done on my website, but for GP, one of the things they've done is the What's New is now on that docs.microsoft. So they're not updating the PDFs that are there. They're putting everything that's new into that docs.microsoft website. Okay. And then next question is, are there any instances where reconcile or other cleanup is needed after utilizing customer modifier combiner? Also, are there instances where the combiner modifier doesn't work and needs to be rolled back? So do you have to run a reconcile after customer modifier and combiner? I don't think so. I know it does it for DL. Yeah. Like when you do stuff with the financials, they'll always say run the reconcile because it's going to start the beginning balances. But I've never noticed it for. It's not a bad thing to run it to do your summary balances, but I've never seen a rule for it.
So if you're combining a customer record or master record, I don't know. That probably is a good question to take a look at, but on the documentation. But I recall, doing the steps and then maybe running reconcile for other utilities. But anyway, that is a good point. I would look at the recommended steps when you are looking to use those utility, and would test it. Kind of do it, run your aging before and after, things like that, just to make sure that you didn't. Get a result you didn't expect, but it should work. It should combine those historical transactions and current transactions. Yeah.
And Carol, have you ever had any issues with people who've done, one of the things I've seen is you want to be careful with those if they have integrations relying on those IDs or third parties that rely on those IDs. So do you want to tell them about what you've seen and what you recommend for that? Because I can tell you my thoughts on it, but I don't want to.
Why don't you share your thoughts? Because, again, I think if you go through and test things like that, you should kind of go through your scenarios of everything that you would do that would affect those customer IDs or vendor IDs if you're using those utilities.
Yeah. One thing to be aware of is if you're using something like Modifier or Combiner, if you're using a third party, like I work with a lot of customers that work with SalesPad. So if they're relying on the customer vendor ID and then they have their own tables that have user-defined fields, you'll need to have your partner update those IDs in the SalesPad tables or the third-party tables. So just be aware that it's going to update GP tables, but it's not necessarily updating third-party tables that run outside of GP. As far as if it doesn't work and needs to be rolled back, if you did a change from one ID to another, you can change it back. But if you combined, there's not a uncombiner because it wouldn't know which ones were which. Is that what you find, Carol?
Yeah, I've never heard of a rollback on the combiner.
Yeah, that's why you do it in test.
Exactly.
And it says, hi, Carol, we were told that GPHR is not the best, and we are going to buy Green Shades add-on. Any advice? Thank you.
Well, I guess it depends on what you're trying to accomplish with your HR module, but all the functionality that most HR departments need or track are in the GPHR module. So if there's something that's missing, talk to your partner, because obviously Green Shades has great HR products and they're great add-ons. I'm not saying they aren't, but, you want to try to make sure that what are our unique needs, and are they, what are the gaps to what's in GP first before you go off So I would still take a look and see if your HR team could use the functionality in HR first.
Yeah. And I always say a lot of the partners have, or a lot of these add-on tools have, have the, what makes them better. Like they'll have even a list.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah, I have asked screenshots for a comparison to GP, and I don't think I've ever received one, but they could probably talk you through it because they do know both products very well. So
yeah. Jennifer added to her question. She said, AR and AP have agings that tie to the GL. How do I run an asset list that shows depreciation year to date, et cetera? Are there reports for fixed assets that can help with doing that?
There's tons of reports. So yeah, definitely you can run, fixed asset depreciation reports on, your entire ledger with all of your different, buckets, your year-to-date accumulated depreciation, your current. So there's, many reports actually in the fixed asset module. It's a lot. And there are also some good fixed asset smart lists. So check those out. I think it could be some SQL reports too, but yeah, I think the reporting is actually pretty good for fixed assets. It usually meets most clients' needs. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Amber?
Yeah, and one of the things that's nice is if you look in the chat as we're talking, I was looking over, and Mark Wiley said that financial reports fixed assets activity helps reconcile it to the general ledger. So there are some reports in there. Biot mentioned that if you combine GL accounts, you want to also, it's not a bad idea to do it after the customer vendor merger. It's not required, but it's a good idea. And there's not an undo. So you always do a full backup. And then Jennifer's again asking about tie to monthly and annual. I would, Jennifer, I'd start with that report and then maybe reach out to your partner or, there's other people we can try to help you out with that. I meant to roll back to a SQL backup. Thank you to both for helping answer my questions. If you're restoring from a SQL backup, again, get your partner involved. That's not a question. I just want to tell them. Will we have access to the slides once everything is over? Yes. Carol, did you send your slides to DynamicsCon folks?
I did. They have them.
Okay. So yeah, they'll usually do them about a week or so out. I think they usually chime in and put it into the little chat every so often and tell you when the slides will be out. Yeah. So that was Reba's question. I had a couple questions. We have 2 minutes, so no more questions, Carol. You got an active Q&A. That's awesome. So you have about 2 minutes. Is there anything that you want to finish up with, or?
Nobody asked about EFT for receivables. I do think that's something worth looking at. And actually, I saw an idea when I was kind of just thinking about this. If you use scheduled payments for accounts receivable, you could also combine that with the EFT for receivables. So you can create the scheduled payments, the payments that are due from your client, and then get their agreement to also withdraw that money with an ACH and send that off to your file. So you can kind of automate it all the way through payments, which is
that's pretty awesome. Cool. Yeah. I did have one thing I thought is you mentioned in there the PSTL tool for doc date verify. One of the ways I use it is GP does warn you when the period is closed, but doc date verify is great for preventing someone from like accidentally typing 3/16 30/32. I've had people who type in the year like 10 years out, or they type it wrong. Yeah. So
it's a year. Yeah.
Yep. It doesn't let you do a year that doesn't exist. So, okay. So we've got 1 minute. Is there anything else you want to say to everybody who joined today?
No, I would just encourage you to dig in, do an inventory of what you have and what you're using, and find out what you also own. At the top of the presentation, I do have links and suggestions of how to go about doing that. So get an inventory and then use what you own. I think that's the best way to uncover how powerful GP is.